All right, let's jump straight into this explainer and decode the completely invisible mechanics of manipulation. We're getting hit with an absolute barrage of information every single day, right? But lurking just beneath the surface of all that normal communication, there are these covert techniques being actively used by social media platforms, marketers, and yes, even cult leaders. So today, we're going to break down exactly how these invisible strings of influence actually work.
It brings up a really unsettling question, doesn't it? Are your decisions actually yours? Or have they been completely hijacked? Well, to answer that, we really need to peel back the layers of how the human brain gets captured in the first place. And honestly, the wildest part is that the absolute most effective manipulation doesn't start with some aggressive demand. It actually starts with a technique that uses zero force whatsoever.
We call this micro-compliance, and this is exactly how cults and algorithms start roping you in. They're never going to hit you with a massive, life-altering request right out of the gate. That would be crazy, right? Instead, they elicit a massive amount of tiny, seemingly meaningless agreements. It's this incredibly subtle priming process that you probably won't even notice until your behavior has been fundamentally, permanently altered.
To give you a real sense of the scale here, think about the number 50. So a stage hypnotist, for example, might ask a volunteer to do up to 50 completely meaningless things before the actual show even starts. They'll say stuff like, okay, hold out your hands, now flip them over, look all the way up to the ceiling, step a little to the left. By the time the hypnotist issues a major command, that person's compliance has been completely hijacked through a mountain of tiny, invisible yeses.
Now, you might be wondering why this works so flawlessly on us. Well, it's simply because our brains literally haven't developed a single new wrinkle in the last 200,000 years. We are biologically hardwired to completely surrender our focus to unexpected novel stimuli. In fact, fMRI studies prove that when something novel happens, the decision to pay attention triggers in the ancient animal part of our brain long before we are even consciously aware of it. It's crazy.
Okay, so once a master of influence has grabbed your focus using that novelty, they use what's called the PCP model to fundamentally alter your reality and guide your decisions. This is basically a three-step cascade: perception, context, and permission. And here's the scary truth. If someone can successfully walk you through these three steps, they can get you to do things you would normally never, ever dream of doing.
Let me tell you a story that shows just how terrifyingly powerful this can be. Back in 1957, during a live hypnosis show, an off-duty police officer was hypnotized right there on stage. The hypnotist completely shifted the guy's context, telling him that he was a sheriff and that the rowdy crowd out in the audience was actually a violent threat pulling out weapons. Because the context was totally altered in his mind, the officer literally pulled his real service weapon and fired into the crowd.
The absolutely crucial takeaway here is this core rule. Context dictates exactly what behavior is permissible. And you see this everywhere today. Whether it's a stage comedian setting the frame for a joke or opinion media framing a political opponent as this imminent threat to democracy, changing the context instantly grants psychological permission for radical actions. By just slightly shifting the frame, the unthinkable suddenly becomes the logical next step.
And that brings us to a huge distinction between clumsy communication and high-level persuasion. Amateur manipulators, they try to direct you. They tell you exactly what to think or how to feel, which of course instantly raises your defenses. True masters, on the other hand, do not direct. They resonate. They acknowledge your current feelings, step into your specific stream of thought, and just kind of flow with you before subtly guiding you way off course.
Let's move straight into our next section here, hacking human identity, or the pre-commitment trap.
Because the absolute deepest form of influence doesn't just change your environment, it hacks your very sense of self. One way they do this is through a sneaky tactic called negative dissociation. Imagine someone casually saying to you, "Man, it's crazy how many people are so closed-minded and terrified of new ideas these days." By making a covert negative observation about a broad group, they trick your brain into instantly declaring, "Well, hey, I am definitely not that person." Boom! You have just unknowingly pre-committed to being open-minded for the rest of that conversation.
If you have any doubts about how effective identity hacking actually is, just think about psychologist Robert Cialdini's famous research. When researchers went door-to-door directly asking people to put this massive, incredibly ugly "drive safe" sign in their front yard, only 1% agreed. But in a different neighborhood, they first asked for a tiny micro-commitment, just saying yes to supporting safe driving and putting a tiny little sticker in their window. A week later, a staggering 85% of those exact same people allowed that giant ugly sign in their yard.
So why in the world did they do it?
Well, it's because once your identity is hacked, you are essentially trapped in a psychological hallway with two giant walls. On one side, you have social anxiety, the intense fear of rejection or breaking a social contract. On the other side, you have cognitive dissonance, the immense mental pain of acting against your own stated identity. So you're just bounced back and forth between these two walls, making compliance the literally only comfortable exit.
Which perfectly sets up our next major section, the attention hijack pipeline, and how modern systems are weaponizing the human brain.
How exactly do algorithms string all this dark psychology together into a weapon that keeps us just endlessly scrolling? Well, they follow a highly engineered biological blueprint to guide your mammal brain. First, they hit you with novelty to instantly hijack your focus. Second, they introduce authority, like a recognizable face or an expert. Third, they signal the tribe, showing you view counts and what everyone else is doing. And finally, they deliver the core emotion. Focus, authority, tribe, emotion. It spells FAT, and it runs flawlessly on your brain every single time.
And buried right inside that pipeline is the feel clever illusion, which is arguably the most dangerous persuasion skill in existence. A manipulator will give you data point A, and then they'll give you data point B, but they will never, ever connect them for you. They force your brain to bridge the gap itself. Why? Because any idea you think you invented in your own mind is an idea you absolutely cannot resist. You'll defend it as your ultimate truth. So how do we actually fight back against all this? Let's dive right into our final section, the ethics of influence and disarming the traps.
Believe it or not, a massive amount of our adult compliance actually traces back to what's called the childhood development triangle. When we were kids, we wrote these unconscious, permanent scripts in three core areas. What did I have to do to make friends? What did I have to do to feel safe? And what did I have to do to earn rewards or love? The crazy thing is, so many of us are still walking around in adult bodies, running our careers and relationships on total autopilot, using those exact same childhood survival scripts.
The secret to breaking free from these traps is definitely not trying to aggressively delete those old scripts, because you literally can't. Instead, you have to catch your own reactions and just hear the child's voice. You have to realize that your deepest limiting beliefs or your sudden urge to just comply to avoid conflict is often just the voice of a frightened 8-year-old trying to protect you. And simply acknowledging that voice, it completely removes its power over your adult decisions.
So if you want to actively, defensively brainwash yourself for the better, you just follow these steps. First, recognize the script that's running in your head. Second, inject some ethical novelty into your life. Change up your environment, disrupt your brain's autopilot. And third, use that power of micro-compliance on yourself. Pre-commit to the identity of the person you actually want to become through tiny, undeniable daily actions.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to leave with this final provocative thought. As you step back out into a world that is meticulously designed to hijack your focus, hack your identity, and manufacture your compliance,